I'll admit it, I'm an Apple fanboy, and I've got to say this, I got to give credit where credit is due, and Vivo crushed it with this phone. It's so good. They're experimenting with new sensors, software, different color science. Meanwhile, Apple, Google, and Samsung just keep playing it safe. They keep releasing the same old thing, drip feeding us little updates year after year, adding gimmicks like the camera control button that no one really needs, and like just little minor tweaks dressed up as progress, and then selling AI as the big new feature. And honestly, it's kind of getting old, and that's why I like this phone. Now, this video isn't sponsored by Vivo, but does have a sponsor, and that's my good friends over at Artlist, and we'll talk about them later. So for a recent trip through Zion National Park, I packed up my usual kit. We got the Sony A1 Mark II, a bag full of lenses, filters and everything, but I ended up shooting the entire thing on this, on the VIVO X200 Pro. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to try something different. And what I came back with were some amazing shots, and I was really impressed and happy I brought this because it didn't let me down. And I shot most things in RAW so I could edit them in Lightroom and use my own presets and stuff, and I was pretty impressed with what I got. Now, as you know, I'm a photographer and less of a tech reviewer, and I know that the X200 Ultra was just released, and so you guys have been asking me to do a video on that. And I did reach out to Vivo to ask about a review unit, and they said they're prioritizing the tech reviewers first, and then eventually I might get one. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll get the Ultra in. And honestly, the camera systems are near identical, so I don't really know what the differences would be outside of the processor. But for now, we're gonna talk about the X200 Pro because it still deserves a video. I promised you one in my last video. So here's my review from my perspective. Starting with performance, the X200 Pro is running the MediaTek Dimensity 9400, which is obviously not what most flagship phones are running these days. It's not the Snapdragon 8 Elite like the X200 Ultra, but I wouldn't let that fool you. This phone rips. There was never a point where I felt like the phone was too slow or lagging or struggling. Shooting RAW, editing stuff, jumping between cameras was nice and fast. I'd say it's a flagship phone, like a flagship chip in a flagship phone. You are gonna be happy with it, so I wouldn't really worry that it doesn't have a Snapdragon in it. The display is also awesome. It's a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED display. It's got 120 Hz refresh rate, a peak brightness rated at 4,500 nits. It's sharp, it's bright, it's responsive. Outside in the sun, you're not gonna have any issues, but I have a feeling you already know this if you're watching this video, so I'm not just gonna read you the spec list. Let's get into what really matters, and that's the camera system. Now, Vivo collaborated with Zeiss on this phone, and I don't know if that was with lenses or coatings, but they definitely did on the software side of things. So things like color science, as well as some cool things like bokeh emulations, and then some other creative tools that I actually feel are pretty thoughtful, and they're not just a brand label slapped on the back of the phone. Inside the camera app, you're gonna get 3 color styles. So you got vivid for punchy and saturated looks. You've got texture for high detail, high contrast, and then the Zeiss Natural, which is my go-to because it just looks good. So the Zeiss Natural look pulls things back a little bit. It's not as HDR fake, super saturated looking. It gives you a nice clean image that feels a little bit more like a real camera and not some JPEG off a phone. Now, obviously, of course, you can switch it into Pro mode and shoot RAW to edit at your own taste, but in terms of the Zeiss color, it's pretty good. All the cameras in this phone are great. The ultra wide is a 50 megapixel 15mm f2. The main camera is a 50 megapixel 23mm f1.6. And if you love shooting portraits, the periscope 85mm f2.7 telephoto camera is 200 megapixels. And that is also a macro as well. And the other trick up their sleeve is that it can do a 10x optical sensor crop because it's such a high resolution sensor. And this is what makes the phone stand out to me, because most of these manufacturers are putting the high res sensor in the main camera and then the macro in the ultra wide, which literally requires you to smash your phone up against the thing you're shooting. You're trying to get in there and you're putting shadows on it. And then with the telephoto macro, it's like a real macro where you can get back from it, and then you get some nice shots. Now, I already made a video covering portraits and portrait mode on this phone, and it's next level, it's amazing. So if you are looking for a phone and you mainly want to do portraits, this is it. And the cool thing is you can emulate Zeiss lenses and the characteristics and the bokeh. They've got biotar, B-speed, sonar, planar, distagon, and then a cinematic mode. And I have a set of old Contax Zeiss primes. I kind of wanted to compare to see what it would look like. So I have an 85 planar and a 35 distagon. And so I tried to match it up to the emulations, and they don't look quite the same. And maybe just because my lenses are older or something, but it's still cool. They're trying something new. You get different bokeh looks, swirly bokeh, cat eye, and then you obviously can get all the classic looks. And it's really cool that they're doing that in this phone. Now you also get a cinematic crop mode that kind of looks like X-Pan, which is awesome. I love X-Pan. It's good for storytelling and travel. And I shot a ton of stuff in Zion in that mode because I just liked how it looked. And it made everything look cinematic. I hate saying that, but it does. Today's video is sponsored by Artlist. And do you ever hear a trending song and you're like, dang, I wish I could put that in my video? Well, now you actually kind of can, because Artlist just came out with a new trending music feature and it's really awesome. You can now see what's blowing up on TikTok, YouTube, or Spotify all in one place. And the cool part is, for every trending track, Artlist is going to suggest up to 10 royalty-free songs that have a similar vibe and sound. And you can even filter by different countries across 17 different regions, so you can kind of find the exact sound where your audience is. And the nice thing is, everything's fully licensed, so you're not going to be chasing these trends only to get hit with a copyright claim at the end of it. This is going to make looking for music in your next project way easier, because you're going to be able to find the exact music that's similar to what's already trending, instead of spending hours scrolling and scrolling trying to find it on your own. And as the charts refresh every single week and the trends change, you're gonna see that on Artlist, so you're always getting what's fresh and new. And if you're already on Artlist, then this feature is already included in your plan. If not, make sure to check out the link in the description. Head over to artlist.io to check it out. Now, as I mentioned, the 200 megapixel telephoto camera is also the macro. So in most phones, they're always using the ultra wide camera for macro, which means you gotta get way too close and you're adding shadows and stuff. Now this, with the telephoto lens, it's amazing. You can step back, you get nice tack sharp macro shots, nice depth too, because you've got that. And they've also got this option for super macro, and I couldn't really see a difference in terms of detail, but what I did notice was a crazy amount of stabilization, like it was almost tracking the subject. So I had it on a flower and it looked like it was moving in the wind with the flower. That's gonna help you get sharper images when things are moving, especially when you're doing macro. Then you also get a 10x optical zoom, crops in on that 200 megapixel sensor, and you can push it all the way up to 100 times digital. Is it usable? I don't know, it's debatable. It looks a little processed. I think up to 25x actually looks pretty good. And anything beyond that just starts to look a little bit too processed. Now they also have a high res mode in the portrait option, and it's kind of like using night mode. You hold down, it kind of is like a countdown while it's processing the images. Now it's in the portrait mode option, but it doesn't use portrait mode bokeh. Now I don't want to get into all the modes on this phone. I just kind of want to cover my experience using it. I did do a few night mode, low light test shots. And for the most part, did a good job. It's not any better or any worse than anything else I've been using. I walked around Vegas and got some shots, so we did have some ambient light. I also took some portrait shots, some night portrait mode shots, and they looked really good as well. And so I don't really have anything negative to say about night mode. It was pretty good. And even the processing on night mode is really fast as well. Now I want to take a couple seconds to talk about video. Now I don't shoot a ton of video on Android phones because I always find it doesn't really look that good. But the cool thing is this phone can shoot log, and it can also shoot 4K 120, it can shoot 8K, but it doesn't do 4K 120 in log. But two other things I really wasn't expecting was the stabilization. The stabilization is amazing. And as I mentioned, this has log, and the log actually looks really good. I pulled some of this footage into Resolve and it held up way better than I expected. So there's nice dynamic range, good skin tones, nice natural looking shadows, and it performed as well as grading Apple log. And it's close, but I wouldn't say it's as good. I still think Apple has the best log, but it's definitely the best video I've seen in an Android phone, especially when it comes to the processing. It's not over sharpened. It looks really good. And one of the other cool things is when you're shooting log, you can turn on like a preview LUT, so you can toggle that on and off if you want to see what it would look like in Rec 709. And that's something that Apple doesn't even have in their main camera app when shooting log. All right, so I brought in a bunch of different RAW files from the VIVO X200 Pro, a couple of different lighting scenarios, a low light shot, but I just want to show you what you can do with this stuff. So if we take a look here at the info, you can see that's a 50 megapixel file, and that's 100 megabytes. So that's how big these DNG files are. Come in here, we can make obviously all of our changes, lift our shadows, lower our shadows, bring the exposure down a little bit, go to our presets here. Some of my classic ports presets on here look pretty good. I think when I edited them, I was using something like this one, CW1, something like that. So as you can see, lots of detail, nice and sharp. If you want the best looking images out of this phone, you should shoot RAW. Now I brought this image in because I wanted to show you how good this shot looks. This isn't even portrait mode. This is just the natural shallow depth of field from that 85mm camera. As you can see, there's tons of detail, nice and sharp. Come in here. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna copy these exact settings and paste them over top. Maybe add some more contrast. Your blacks down a little bit. But in here, you got your full white balance control if you want to change that. Same thing you would get with a typical camera. Now this shot has a lot of sky, the sun facing right into it. This is a good one for dynamic range. And you can lift the shadows here. You can see how much shadow detail we have, or bring them down a little bit. And then when it comes to the highlights, you can get some of that sky back. Obviously this is pretty much gone when you're facing straight into the sun here. You can bring the exposure down. Actually, you can see how much detail is still in that image. That's pretty crazy. If you wanted to lift the shadows, like you don't want to make it look too HDR, you know? Maybe warm it up a little bit. Add a bit more contrast. Lots of detail in here. I guess I was focused on this rock right here versus the background, but you can see how that looks. All right, this last shot is a raw shot taken at night, and this is where I'm wondering if it's even doing any computational on the raw, because when I lift this up, you can see how much noise there is. And you don't typically see this on most raw files from smartphones these days because they're doing so much processing and it's all computational that it removes a lot of the noise. But if we bring this back down, lower our highlights down, look how much room there is in the highlights. That's crazy. Shadows, we don't really want to lift those because I think we're really pushing the sensor here. It needed to look kind of dark anyway. I was going to go for this kind of moody vibe here. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can do with these files. You can treat it pretty much like a real camera. The only thing I'd say that you don't have is shadow detail, especially in low light scenarios like this. I actually don't even know what ISO I was at. It's probably pretty high. I was at ISO 2000, and that's on the raw files. So that's not processed. ISO 2000 on the processed night mode images look clean compared to this. After I recorded that screen capture, I was thinking there has to be some computational RAW because I did see it somewhere. And this phone has an option to do RAW or super RAW when you're in the Pro mode. And so this is RAW, just straight up RAW at ISO 2000. And as you can see, there's going to be a bit of noise in here. So when we lift these shadows, you're seeing all the noise down here in the shadows, but that looks real. This looks like what a real camera would look like, and that's not computational. Now when I switch to this shot, this is super raw, and this is more like what Apple, Samsung, Google is doing. It's a computational raw file. It's doing multiple exposures and compiling into a DNG. Now when we go to this file, you can see when I lift the shadows, we're not getting any noise in the shadows. It just looks kind of mushy, and that's because it's doing this computational processing. And I would say it almost doesn't look nearly as good, but it will save you if you want a raw file, you want more dynamic range without having tons of noise. And looking at these images side by side after I put a preset on them, I think I prefer the non-computational raw file. Yeah, there's a little bit more noise, but it feels real and doesn't feel as processed. All right, so let's talk about the downsides. I'd say the biggest issue is just how many settings and modes there are. If you're not really well versed in camera stuff, it would definitely be overwhelming. Now, obviously you can just set it to auto mode and leave the phone in auto and let it do its thing. But they've added so much stuff, I could see how it could get confusing. And if you're in like high res mode, some lenses get disabled, some filters don't work in portrait mode when you have the Zeiss color effects turned on. And when you're in RAW, you don't get to use the 10x camera, little quirky things like that. And something else that's kind of quirky is if you swipe up from the bottom, the entire UI changes, and now it's in street photography mode, which all I can tell is it's kind of like full manual controls or full auto. And so it just gives you kind of a new UI for that. I don't know if you really need it, but it's something different. So it takes a bit of menu diving to really learn how things kind of work and play out. And of course, you can't officially buy this in Canada or the US. You're gonna have to import it, which could be a bit of a hassle, especially if something goes wrong and there's tariffs and things now. Now there is a global version, which I have here, but I'm not sure if it works with all the carriers in my area. It's at the point where I almost forget I'm even shooting with a phone sometimes, but to get fun quick shots or on travel, this could replace a lot of travel cameras, especially if you're shooting in Pro mode and RAW and you have full control over the settings. Even in portrait mode, having the different bokeh emulations and different color science from Zeiss kind of gives you something special that looks like it was not taken on a phone, if you know what I mean. Phones like this are proof that mobile photography is getting more and more advanced. It's still got some room to grow. It's not perfect, especially when it comes to processing, but the image quality is getting so much better now. They're getting more fun. There's a lot of useful features that I think Apple and Samsung should take note on. And I think that's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one.